to the audio play first part of Prisoner of Azkaban. And this is a lot of people's favorite. And a couple of things I just want to introduce our lovely new second in command, the awesome Timbone, who will be around during the rest of these audio plays. And I want to wish everyone listening to this video have a great time, because this was so fun. And with that, let's get into it.
The street slumbers, adrift in shadow. We see a large shadow heading for one of the upstairs bedrooms of the homes below. Inside said bedroom, huddled under his blankets, flashlight in one hand and a quill in the other, is a teenage boy named Harry Potter. And before him, a book is spread, as well as a long piece of parchment. He's been forced to do his work under the cover of the night. His gaze lands on a passage, and he examines it closely. He then writes busily for a few moments, but he is then interrupted, however, by a light tapping on his window. It was his snowy owl, Hedwig, accompanied by two other owls. One, a rather elderly owl, is the Weasley's Errol. The other is unfamiliar. Together, they bear a variety of parcels.
Hedwig.
He quickly lets the trio of owls inside, and Errol promptly collapses. Harry gathers him up and takes him over to a cage, where a bowl of food and water waits. Hedwig joins him. Harry gathers up the collection of letters and parcels from the remaining owl. Carrying them over to his bed, he stares at the lot, a slightly bemused smile on his face.
Happy birthday to me.
Examining the spread, his eyes catch on one of the parcels which seems to be growling faintly. But placing it aside, he opens a letter. It was accompanied by a photo. It depicts a red-headed family standing before the Egyptian pyramids. Harry sees his best friend, Ron, waving exuberantly, arm around his younger sister, Ginny. In his hand, he carries Scabbers, his pet rat. Harry then collects the several letters among the pile, placing them on his bedside table, and then gathers the presents, placing them under a loose floorboard. He also puts away his school materials, and before getting into bed, he had a contented smile on his face. The next day, the doorbell chimes and a shrill voice thunders.
Harry! Harry!
Harry bounds down the stairs and into the front hall, where his Aunt Petunia and Cousin Dudley stand stiffly. Petunia flicks a bit of fluff from Dudley's sweater, glowers crossly at Harry, and jerks her head towards the door.
Well, go on, open it.
Harry reaches for the knob when, blam! It bursts open, revealing a large waddling woman and a large waddling bulldog. Uncle Vernon lurches forward out of the teeming rain, an enormous suitcase in his hand, and he drops it on Harry's feet.
Marge, welcome. How was the train?
Wretched. Ripper got sick.
Ah, how unfortunate.
I would have left him with the others, but he pines so when I'm away. Don't you, darling?
Uncle Vernon, I need you to sign this form.
What is it?
Nothing. Something for school. We're allowed to go to the village.
Uncle Vernon eyes the parchment in Harry's hand very suspiciously.
Later, perhaps. If you behave.
I will if she does.
So, still here, are you?
Yes.
Don't say yes in that ungrateful tone. Damn good of my brother to keep you, if you ask me. It had been straight to an orphanage if he'd been dumped on my doorstep.
Just then, Dudley, sitting comatose before the TV, emits a hollow, brain-dead chuckle.
Is that my dudders? Is that my nephew Boo? Come and say hello to your Auntie Marge.
Marge flashes a thick fan of pound notes. Dudley blinks, waddles forward, and extends his plump palm obediently. Harry looks on, then sees Ripper snuffling about his ankle. Then reluctantly, he picks up Marge's suitcase and begins to lug it up the stairs. In the dining room, as Harry clears the dishes, Uncle Vernon brings out a bottle of brandy.
Can I tempt you, Marge?
Just a small one. A bit more. That's it. Excellent nosh, Petunia. It's normally just a fry-up for me, what with 12 dogs.
She smacks her lips, lowers her brandy, and lets Ripper take a slobbery lap out of the glass, then catches Harry looking.
What are you smirking at? Where is it that you sent him, Vernon?
St. Brutus's Secure Center for Incurably Criminal Boys. It's a first-rate institution for hopeless causes.
Hearing this, Harry frowns. He glances at Uncle Vernon, who simply glares darkly at him.
I see. And do they use the cane at St. Brutus's, boy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been beaten loads of times.
Excellent. I won't have this namby-pamby, wishy-washy nonsense about not beating people who deserve it. Still, mustn't blame yourself for how this one's turned out, Vernon. It all comes down to blood. Bad blood will out. What is it the boy's father did, Petunia?
Nothing. That is, he didn't work. He was unemployed.
Of course. And a drunk, I expect.
Harry angrily slams his hands down on the counter.
That's a lie.
Aunt Marge pauses on her wine, eyes narrowing down on Harry.
What did you say?
My dad wasn't a drunk.
There's a stare-off between the two, as each decides whether to continue the altercation. Then, pop! The glass in Aunt Marge's hand explodes.
Oh my goodness, Marge!
Not to worry, Petunia. I have a very firm grip.
Harry stares at the shattered glass in surprise.
Go to your room now, Harry.
Quiet, Vernon. It doesn't matter about the father. In the end, it comes down to the mother. You see it all the time with dogs. If there's something wrong with the bitch, there'll be something wrong with the pup.
Shut up! Shut up!
Aunt Marge tries to reply when, zing! A button on her dress sails into the air. Seams groan, thread snaps. Aunt Marge's eyes widen, her cheeks below, her whole body belows, and she begins to inflate like a monstrous balloon.
Marge!
As she rises, Uncle Vernon leaps for her. Ripper growls and jumps, fixing his teeth to Vernon's trousers. Harry, frightened by what he's done, watches Aunt Marge bounce gently across the ceiling and into the conservatory. The others race to the backyard. As Aunt Marge begins to float away, Uncle Vernon grips her hand.
Don't worry, I got you.
Slowly, to his horror, Uncle Vernon himself begins to rise. Aunt Marge looks fearfully into her brother's eyes.
Vernon, don't you dare!
But he does. In the end, he lets go. He falls to his knees and watches Aunt Marge float away. Seconds later, Harry crashes inside his room, takes his trunk, then puts his heel to the loose floorboard and removes everything he's had to keep hidden there, pocketing his wand, of course. Then turning, he grabs the photograph of his parents and adds it to the top of the pile. Boom! 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 Harry tows the truck down the stairs, but he finds Uncle Vernon waiting for him.
You bring her back. You bring her back and put her right.
No, she deserved what she got. You keep away from me.
Harry waves his wand frantically, threatening his uncle. But Uncle Vernon eyes the wand nervously. Then he grins with knowing cruelty.
You're not allowed to do magic out of school. They won't have you now. You've got nowhere to go.
Anywhere's better than here.
Harry storms out with his trunk seconds later, and he walks to the streets. High in the sky, he can see a plump dot rise. It was Aunt Marge floating in the air. Later, Harry walks and walks and walks, then stops. He glances about. He was at an empty playground. There were swings creaking gently on rusted chains. There was a tiny carousel, kissed gently by the wind, turning slowly. Harry dropped the trunk, sitting on top of it. He's completely alone, with no help whatsoever, and nowhere to go. Deep in the night, an alarm shrieks. Then it goes silent. Harry, he was still as a statue, listening. And in the trees above, leaves tremble and the wind gathers. Harry turns, studying the swaying swings, the carousel, then stiffens. He turns back, sensing something in the shadows across the street. He rises, slowly drawing his wand. Then he sees it. Something big, darker than the shadows which conceal it. Something with wide, gleaming eyes. Harry steps back. He was afraid to look, but afraid not to. Wand outstretched, he trips, tumbling over the forgotten trunk. Then the tip of his wand blazes. Bang! Twin beams of blinding light spear the night.
Ah!
Giant wheels bear down. Harry rose clear just in time as a preposterously purple triple-decker bus screeches to a halt in front of him. Gold letters glimmer above the windscreen. The words, "The Night Bus." Doors hiss, snap back, revealing Stan Shunpike, an 18-year-old boy in a wrinkled conductor's uniform. Stan had a pasty face and raccoon eyes. He looked like he hadn't seen the sun in years.
Welcome to the Night Bus, emergency transport for the stranded witch or wizard. My name is Stan Shunpike, and I'll be your conductor for this evening. What you doing down there?
I fell over.
What you fell over for?
But I didn't do it on purpose.
Stan is eyeing Harry very suspiciously, but he still nods his head slowly.
Well, come on then, let's not wait for the grass to grow.
As Stan grabs Harry's trunk, Harry peers into the shadows across the street, now merely shadows, and climbs aboard. As Harry enters, he sees inside that there are no seats, but only beds. The brass frames needed a shine, the lines awash. And one bed, a disheveled wizard grunts, turning over in his sleep. Behind the wheel was Ernie, an unshaven wizard in thick glasses, staring straight ahead, armpits stained with sweat.
Take her away, Ern.
Bang! Ernie rockets away and the beds, as one, slides 6 inches to the rear. Harry drops onto the bed nearest, peering up at the chandelier swaying directly above his head. Beyond the windscreen, oncoming traffic whips past in a blur.
What you say your name was again?
Harry thinks for a second, debating whether he wants to be hassled at the moment.
Neville Longbottom.
Stan, huddled in an armchair, peeks over the Daily Prophet. He was eyeing Harry coolly before disappearing once more. Harry brushes the fringe of his hair more firmly over his skull, hiding it. He then watches an ambulance, siren wailing, careen past.
Whereabouts you heading?
The Leaky Cauldron. That's in London.
Is it now? Get that, and the Leaky Cauldron that's in London.
Stan grins with sinister delight, showing very bad teeth.
Leaky Cauldron, stay away from the pea soup.
As the bus careens through the dark streets of England, Harry peers out the windscreen, watching London careering by.
Isn't this a bit dangerous?
Nah, haven't had an accident in what? A week, is it, Ern?
We was dropping off Madame Marsh. She is deserving to visit her son.
Sure enough, directly ahead, a little old lady is crossing the street. Ernie hits the brakes hard and Harry flies forward, palms to the window. The brakes pinch down. The bus stops inches from the old lady, and Harry flies back onto his bed. Bang! The bus rockets forward once more. As Harry rights himself, he notices the headline of Stan's Daily Prophet. Escape from Azkaban. Below, a sunken-faced man with long matted hair glowers from a moving photograph.
That man! I saw him on the Muggle news.
That's Sirius Black, that is. Don't tell me you've never been hearing of Sirius Black, Neville.
Just what was on the news.
A murderer he is. Got himself locked up in Azkaban for it.
How did he escape?
That's the question, isn't it? He's the first one that done it. Gives me the collie wobbles thinking he's out there, though. I'll tell you that. Big supporter of you-know-who. Reckon you've heard of him.
Harry nods and, as he does, Black's eyes shift in the photo, meeting Harry's.
Yeah, him I've heard of.
Black was caught the day after his master was defeated by Harry Potter.
Harry flattens his bangs again.
Murdered 13 people in revenge. He was in the middle of the street just laughing. 'Cause he's mad. Ain't he, Ern?
If he were when they caught him, he certainly is now. Serves him right too.
They remain silent at this somber declaration. Harry looks out the window and notices that none of the passerby on the streets pay them any attention.
This bus! Don't the Muggles ever...
Them? Don't listen properly, do they? Don't look properly either. Never notice nothing they don't.
Just then, a couple walking a dog are engulfed by a rush of wind as the invisible night bus whooshes past. The couple glances about in bewilderment, and the dog yaps madly.
Turn! Turn!
Ernie fans the wheel, sending the night bus into a dizzying 360-degree turn. Headlights pinwheel past the windows as the bus rides up on two wheels, and Harry is sent flying once more. Grabbing fast to the center pole, he pirouettes through the air when Ernie slams on the brakes. The night bus fishtails into view and squeals to a stop, centimeters from a parked car. Whoosh! The bus settles and, tink, taps the bumper. But instantly, the car's alarm wails. The chandelier sways drunkenly as the bus doors open. The steps groan with heavy feet and a figure appears. It was Tom, the innkeeper of the Leaky Cauldron pub.
Mr. Potter, at last.
As the night bus rockets off, Tom and Harry are revealed. Harry glances up, reading the sign above. The Leaky Cauldron. Tom drags Harry's trunk inside, then pauses and, with a flick of his wand, silences the car alarm. Harry trails through the quiet room. The bartender glances up, his gaze lingering perhaps a bit too long. A solitary wizard reads a book while, at his elbow, his coffee cup stirs itself. Tom then leads Harry upstairs, and as Harry follows Tom inside, he finds a snow-white owl perched atop a chair.
Hedwig!
Right smart bird you've got there, Mr. Potter. Arrived only minutes before yourself.
A man clears his throat. Harry turns, finding a pinstrip silhouette at the window, staring at the ghostly shadows beyond. Harry's reflection shivers in the glass, but the man doesn't turn. Tom takes a position against the wall, fishes a pair of walnuts from his pocket and, crack, crushes the shells between his palms. Then finally, Fudge turns and faces Harry.
I should tell you, Mr. Potter, that earlier this evening your uncle's sister was located just south of Sheffield, circling a chimney stack. The accidental magic reversal department was dispatched, she has been properly punctured, and her memory modified. She has no recollection of the incident whatsoever.
Harry waits. A man condemned. Then Fudge turns.
So that's that, and no harm done. Crumpet?
Harry glances warily from the plate of pastries on the desk to Tom, who works a grimy thumb into his gum, trying to free a walnut sliver.
No, thank you. Minister, I don't understand. I broke the law. Underage wizards aren't allowed to use magic at home.
Oh, come now, Harry. The Ministry doesn't send people to Azkaban for blowing up their aunts. On the other hand, running away like that, given the state of things, was very, very irresponsible.
The state of things, sir?
We have a killer on the loose.
Sirius Black, you mean? But what's he got to do with me? I broke the law.
Crack! Tom shatters another walnut. Then Fudge smiles very nervously.
We had to take into account... Well, no matter. You're safe. That's what matters. Surely you don't want to be expelled?
course not. But
Then what's the fuss? Next week you'll be on your way to Hogwarts. These are your new school books. I took the liberty of having them brought here for you.
Harry eyes the stack of books and other supplies he indicates.
By the way, Harry, whilst you're here, it would be best if you didn't wander.
Morning a few days later, Harry is standing with Hedwig. He then turns, eyeing his new books. He has brought out his presents, which he laid on the bed. He studies the growling package among them. It was a book entitled The Monster Book of Monsters. He gives the rope binding it a tug. Then instantly, the book leaps to the floor. Pages flying, book cover snapping. Harry gives chase. Then the book turns. It begins nipping viciously at his shoes. Harry vaults atop the bed, watching the book disappear underneath. Then he grabs a pillow. Seconds later, the book scuttles into view and Harry pounces. Flump! The book roars angrily, muffled beneath the pillow. Harry then takes the rope, preparing to rebind it. In the hallway where room 11 is located, a young witch in a maid's robes pushes a cart down the hall. Harry exits his room as the witch knocks on the door.
Housekeeping.
As she opens the door, she is greeted by a thunderous roar and a rush of wind.
I'll come back later.
Something small and fast dashes by Harry's feet. Looking, he spies a rather ragged-looking rat, pursued by a decidedly ugly orange cat as they race down the stairs. Harry follows them and moves down the stairs too. He hears voices coming from below.
I'm warning you, Hermione. Keep the bloody beast of yours away from Scalabus or I'll turn it into a tea cozy.
He's a cat, Ronald. What do you expect? It's in his nature.
As Harry reaches the bottom of the staircase, he finds Ron Weasley protectively cradling Scabbers, while Hermione Granger does her best to restrain a hissing Crookshanks.
A cat? Is that what he told you? Looks more like a pig with hair if you ask me.
That's a rich come from the owner of that smelly old shoebrush. It's all right, Crookshanks. You just ignore the mean little boy.
Then, sensing another presence in the room, they both turn.
Harry!
Moments later, the three friends sit at the main table in the Leaky Cauldron's dining room. As Ron smooths the dog-eared clipping onto the table, Harry studies it. There's the same image that he received in the mail. Hermione ignores it, still stroking Crookshanks.
Egypt. What's it like?
Brilliant. It got loads of old stuff. Mummies, dead moss, tomes.
You know, the ancient Egyptians of the Nile River Delta worshipped the cat goddess Bast.
Ron glares stonily at Hermione. Then he turns back to Harry.
I also got a new wand.
Just then, a commotion is heard. The Weasleys, Percy, Fred, George, Ginny, Arthur, and Molly arrive en masse, laden with purchases from Diagon Alley.
Not flashing the clipping board again, are you on?
I haven't shown anyone.
No, not a soul. Unless you count Tom, the daymaid, the nightmaid, the cook, the bloke that came to fix the toilet, that wizard from Belgium.
Mrs. Weasley takes Harry's face in her hands and she smiles, before wrangling him into an embrace, as if she was relieved to see him somehow.
It's good to see you, Harry.
Everyone gathers around Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, continuing to shower Harry with greetings.
Oh, good to see you too, Mrs. Weasley.
I imagine you're ready to be done with this place. Hey, Harry?
Harry shrugs.
Well, it's not so bad. I'll be ready to get back to Hogwarts, though.
How are we getting to King's Cross, Dad?
Arthur awkwardly hesitates, as if he was reluctant to answer the question.
The, ministry is providing a couple of cars for us.
Ron is puzzled by this, but his father's expression is enough to convince him to not ask any more questions.
Makes no sense at all not to tell him. Harry's got a right to know. I tried to tell Fudge, but he insists on treating Harry like a child. He's 13 years old.
The truth would terrify him, Arthur. Do you really want Harry to go back to Hogwarts with that hanging over his head? He's happy not knowing.
I don't want to terrify him. I want to put him on guard. I can't imagine what might have happened the night if you ran away if the Knight bus hadn't got to him first.
Harry will be perfectly safe at Hogwarts.
We thought Azkaban was perfectly safe. If he can break out of Azkaban, he can break into Hogwarts.
But no one is sure Black's actually...
Arthur bangs his fist on the table. Hidden on the stairs, Harry jumps in surprise.
Molly, how many times do I have to tell you? The guards of Azkaban reported that Black's been saying the same words in his sleep for weeks now. Always the same. He's at Hogwarts. Black's deranged, and he will do anything to bring you-know-who back to power.
And I suppose Dumbledore knows all about this.
Of course. They need his permission to allow Azkaban guards at Hogwarts. He wasn't happy, but given the circumstance, he agreed.
Not happy. They're there to catch Black.
Dumbledore isn't fond of them, and neither am I. When it comes to it,
if they save Harry,
then I will never say another word against them. It's late, Molly. We better go up.
Alarmed, Harry dashes up the stairs and back to his room, followed a few moments later by the Weasley parents. Sitting on his bed, Harry contemplates on what he's heard. He faces the mirror across from the bed.
I'm not gonna be murdered.
That's the spirit, dear.
The next morning, the main room of the Leaky Cauldron is a mess of activity as the Weasleys, Harry, and Hermione chase down last-minute bits and bombs.
Harry, I wonder if we might have a word.
Of course, Mr. Weasley.
As Mr. Weasley pulls Harry away, the others continue to hover over the clippings in the background. Harry notices Mr. Weasley glance edgily at the fugitive poster tacked to the wall. In it, Sirius Black glowers under the words, "Have you seen this man?"
Harry, there are some within the ministry who would strongly discourage me from divulging what I'm about to tell you, but I think we need to know the facts, because you're endangered.
Harry's eyes drift to the fugitive poster.
Oh, it's alright, Mr. Weasley. I already know. That he escaped from Azkaban. That he killed someone.
You know, how could you possibly?
I heard you and Mrs. Weasley talking last night. I couldn't help it. I'm sorry.
I am sorry you had to find out this way, Harry.
It's okay, really. This way, you haven't broken your word to Fudge, and I know what's going on.
Harry, 13 years ago when you stopped...
Mr. Weasley hesitates, unable to continue.
Voldemort?
Harry, I hate when you say...
I know, sorry. I'll hate it too.
In Black's mind, only you stand in the way of you-know-who returning to power. That's why he's broken. That's why he's broken out of Azkaban, to find you and...
Yet again, Mr. Weasley hesitates.
And kill me.
Mr. Weasley nods nervously.
Harry, I want you to swear that whatever you might hear, you won't go looking for Black.
Mr. Weasley, why would I go looking for someone who wants to kill me?
Mr. Weasley nods, then claps Harry on the shoulder.
Just watch yourself, will you, Harry?
Thank you, everyone, for listening to our first part of Prisoner of Azkaban. It was a blast to work on, and I hope you guys stay tuned for part 2 in the very near future. Thank you all so very much.
Of course. They needed permission to allow Azkaban guards at Hogwarts. He wasn't happy, but given the circumstances...
I'll come back later. I don't get paid enough for this.
Not that NFT. No. No, not that Fortnite skin. No.